det vil man ikke jo forstå.
Ja.
Ayo hajine, ayo hajine, yo hajine, yo hajine, ayo hajine, yo wa. Ayonawa, hiyo, hai, yonawa, hiyo, hai, yeah. And for my next number, I'm all shook up.
I forgot to say that he arrived last night with two exquisite baskets from his cousin David Deerhouse, who Michelle and I met last year at the Turtle Island healing ceremony at the Bison and Pasadum Cake. And David came to the area where we were making Johnny cakes and shelling corn and giving away corn food to people for 2 days or 3 days. And he sat with us much of the time, and we learned that he made corn washing baskets, and we begged him to come. He couldn't come, and we begged him to make us a corn washing basket. And last night, these two exquisite baskets arrived. You can see that they are tight weave on the sides and open weave on the bottom, so that after you have boiled your corn in wood ash, you need to rinse the ash off, and so it flushes through. And anyway, we're extremely grateful that these are here, and that's David is here with us with those. And those would have been those with pack baskets and other utility baskets before there were tourist baskets. This was a hardcore necessary basket for the survival of the people. And now we have two of them here. I won't interrupt you again. Soon.
All right.
Introduce your partner.
I'm lost for words, which is the first. So first of all, my name is Ronos Tayuntos. It's my Mohawk name, which means corn planter. I adopted this name about 30 years ago when I was all the Iroquois people. So first of all, I'm a Mohawk from Ganawage. My wife is Mohawk from Augusasne. So we're Mohawk. And in our tradition, we have to marry opposite clan. So I'm a bear and my wife is a wolf. And all my children are wolf. My mother and my aunties were all bear. And this has been for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we maintain that family lines this way. Corn is a staple of life for the Iroquois people or Mohawk people. And Iroquois people, our homeland, traditional homeland is the state of New York, starting from around Albany all the way to Buffalo. And our nations are Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. And later in 1700, Tuscarora from North Carolina joined in with us, and we've been known as people of the Six Nation. And I've been growing corn all my life. I learned when I was a little boy watching my grandfather, and I still plant the way my grandfather planted. And why he planted that way, I don't know. That's what he learned. So it passes down this way. I plant from east to west because everything that we do in our culture goes from east to west. Our ceremonies go counterclockwise, where the other native people follow clockwise. I don't know why they do that, because there was no clock until the Europeans brought one here. But I do know that things grow from east to west, and if you if you plant a bean that will climb on the corn, you look at it and it's going to grow east to west. If a tornado is going to come here, it's going to spin east to west. And how quickly you're going to leave this building, I don't know. You're going to run east to west, it doesn't matter. So the other thing is that I also work as a native chaplain in the federal prisons in Canada. I've been working there for 15 years now, and so they're part of the things that I do is I teach about native culture, spirituality. I run sweat lodge ceremonies, and of course we have some amazing, beautiful gardens, which includes corn, beans, and squash, and other things that people like to grow. The other three sisters, tomatoes, peppers, and cucumber. And so I used to work here in the I used to work in New Hampshire at the powerhouse at Seabrook in the 1980s. Most of the men in our community worked there because Mohawks were noted for doing the high steel. My grandfather actually worked on Empire State Building. My same grandfather escaped when he was a teenager from residential school, and he went to California and worked on the Golden Gate Bridge. So there's a lot of things in today about residential school going on, and people are becoming aware of a lot of the stuff that's happened. So a lot of misplaced culture comes from these things that have gone on in our communities. So being attacked in the 1700s still remains up to modern times, because in 1990 up in Oka, which is about another 50 miles a little bit north and west of us, there was an incident with about the trees. You might have heard about that, and they want to make a golf club larger by cutting the trees that were planted there, and these were huge pines that had been growing there about 100 years before. And at that time, a good friend of mine, I planted a garden. We had large gardens there, and so just to let you know that, so the army tank ran over our corn. So I feel good about that, and I feel bad about that, because it's part of history. So I'm part of history because the army tank ran over our corn. They claim, well, they were looking for weapons. You know, the weapon is in the corn itself. What is a weapon? It's an instrument. It's a tool that's gonna make us survive. And corn is what's gonna make us survive. I just came back from Minnesota, and I met a gentleman named John Schreck and John Ingleton, and we talked about the corn, and so actually I saw that John had one of my corns that I had offered. So in the 1980s, just to go back, when I worked in New Hampshire, I used to get this book called Organic Gardening. And so at that time, I saw an advertisement for the Seed Savers. So I got involved with them, but you know, with them, you had to get seeds from somebody. Then the next year we were offered. But me, I felt, well, I've always been a seed saver. Just never termed it that way. It's something that we live. So even today, people say, "Why is a seed saver?" I said, "No, it's something that I live. It's seed saving to me. In one way, I term it like that's a person's hobby, like a stamp collector, you know, and so on. So, but if you live it, you have a different mentality, because it implies many other things. It implies that there's a knowledge, there's a history, there's a belief, and everything begins with ceremony. And that's the way we are. And a number of years ago, I spoke at a little gathering in Aguasasni, and there was a gentleman from Guatemala. He was there, and then he was talking about these things. And we said, with all the knowledge that the non-native people use, or they can go to the moon and so on, but they can't reinvent corn. Why? It came from this grass and that grass. Well, take these grass and try to do it yourself. You can't. And his answer to that later, when he got to speak, he said, because it has three parts. The third part is spirituality. You see? And that's what's missing. And so you have to reconnect all that. And what is spirituality? It's a feeling, it's a knowledge, it's a thing that you live, it's a thing that you breathe, it's a thing that you know, but it's a thing that you pass on. And your family becomes part of that. That's how all that thing works. So that song I sang, you know, it was on the top 100 of the Mohawk people for about 500 years. You know, almost as good as Madonna. See, and as you realize what happens even with music and a sound, it creates an energy, and the energy is what the nature and the corn hears and feel. Like today, if you get sick, you go see the doctor and you complain, oh, I don't feel well, give you a pill, go back, I don't feel well. Eventually he'll give you a sugar pill and you're cured. Why? Because it played on your mind. And how is the mind put in balance is with the energy and the sound and music. And wherever you go, that creates energy. Last Kiss concert I went to, I'm still recovering. So there we are. So from that time, I met a lot of great people and seed savers, and I got involved with some organic things. But that's what we've been doing. We've always been doing this in our communities, and we share with each other, and so on and so forth. Eventually, I met a gentleman named Doug Eaglin, and we've become great friends since that time. But he told me, he said, Steve, no, he said, you travel throughout your territories. So today, our communities are in Quebec, Ontario, and near Toronto, and around Buffalo, New York, and Syracuse. That's our main communities today. And since I traveled through all the communities for ceremonies all my life, I knew a lot of old different people. And when you go visit Indians, you know, you go there and they serve you something, you know, even if it's a cup of coffee, because that's a tradition. That's it's a legend. It talks about in the old days there was a beggar or an old man, all looked like a beggar. That's the best way to describe it. He came to one of the villages where he saw the symbol of a turtle. They had a turtle shell, and they chased him away because he looked like a, you know, he looked like a vagrant. And this went on until he came to the village of the Bear Clan people, and he was taken in, and then they cured him with medicine. He sent them out, the old lady, to pick the medicine, till finally one day she came back and she saw this bright young looking man in beautiful buckskin, and he said that he was the great spirit who returned to the people to see if they remember about ancient traditions, about respect and for caring for each other. And she gave this gift to the Bear Clan people. So we maintain these things, we maintain these philosophies. So when we come together, because you don't know, that person could be the creator, come to see if you still follow these ways. So if it's just a cookie, that's what they share. And so when I used to go visit these older people, well, like he said, a lot of them are gone now. And that's what they would do. They said, well, Steve, do you grow this kind of corn in your community? I said, no. So they just take a whole big braid of corn and there it is. They don't put no value in price, monetary. They put a value in the spirit of sharing. They put the value in that corn is going to continue. And then part of our ways is that later on, I have a good corn, I would return back some to him. And in different communities, we kept many different varieties. And so over the last 35 years or so, I've collected about 35 different varieties. And I grew them out in different times and different years and spread them out. And the Army tank ran over 2 varieties of our corn. And so, which you still keep going, but so that's what I did. And we still keep them, and today we look at a lot of different things. There's a lot of more people have interest, but we have interest too because of climate change. But climate change is just more than that. Even though I know it's fake news, This one, I just let you know, I was told we're gonna keep the fake news out of it today. What do you think, LB?
Whatever you want.
There you are, you know. I feel like this could be a church revival right now, you know. So there you are. So this is what happens. But every year we start off by planting. We're gonna have our planting ceremony next weekend, and it begins that the people will bring seed with them, and they will collect them in a big basket, and then we play a bowl game that goes back to our creation story. And then at that time we play the men against the women, and the winner of it, or I should say the loser, is kind of like obliged to go out and turn the fields. But today we all work together, and we do that as symbolically, because really we always work together. And so, but it's a lot of fun. And then after that, all the seed is placed on the floor, and the women get up in a big circle around it, and we use a turtle rattle and a box turtle, and they start to sing, and each woman will speak and will ask the power of our mother the earth and our grandmother the moon that the seed will grow and that life will continue, because it's in there. And they sing their own personal song, and they go around till they finish. When they finish, they pick up all the seed, and then they have another song that they sing. And the song that they use goes right back to the creation story, where the woman fell from the sky, and when she came on the land again, she walked in the direction that everything goes from east to west, and that way, and she sang. And we still use this song for hundreds of countless centuries when we start to plant. And when they finish, then they distribute the seed to the side that won. If the men won, then they give it all to the men. If the women won, the women will give it all out to the women. So that's the beginning. And then there are numerous songs, beginning with the women's dance, because the women are connected first. And the song is called Osida Garanye, which means that their feet is grinding into actually means their feet is grinding into the ground. So it symbolizes that they're covering the sacred seed of life, which is corn. So if you ever go to poor villages in Mexico, that's how they plant. The old man will come along with the donkey and make a row, and they would put all the seed, and all the young girls will go in there barefoot and go cover it with their feet. So they still continue to do that. And so that goes right back to the beginning. And so that's the name of that dance. And then there are songs for the food, there's songs for the men who go hunting, and it's all interconnected. So you need all these things. That's the knowledge, that's the spirituality, and that's living, and that's how we live corn. So that's how it works. You see? So you have to have that all combined, because when you begin to separate certain things, then there's a problem. But going back to history, sweet corn was only known to the non-native people in the year 1779 under orders of George Washington to General Sullivan to attack the Iroquois people and burn their villages and destroy their corn. And that's where the first time they saw sweet corn growing on the Susquehanna River. And the corn was black and white, sweet corn. And up until the early 1900s, there was no yellow sweet corn like there is today that was developed. And we still keep that variety. But and today, because everything out there is genetically modified, and any kind of sweet corn that you find, and if you would take an old-fashioned sweet corn, they won't taste the same, because that one is injected with whatever. So there's a lot of knowledge in that. Flint corn, as we talked about Flint corn, while it grows very well in the northeastern part of North America, in central, then you have dent corn in south, and then you've got more flower corns in the southwest because of their climate. And I didn't bring in really any with me because I didn't know what would go on at the border. and but when I got to the border last night, just gave him my card, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going Norwich Walk." "Okay, goodbye," and that was it. But more than that, the guy come up from our community up north. That's and so and he asked if we knew people in Gozasani and so on. So I had the baskets with me, my cousin made, and as Elvie was saying, it's all part of what we do. So we use the hardwood ash. Oak is very good, and hard maple is very good in beech. So we take the ash and we boil our corn in there, and then we rinse it to the corn sifting basket, and then we cook the corn or dry it to make corn flour and make cornbread. We don't really make Johnny cake like I heard somebody talk about. That's a kind of different. Our cornbread is a cornbread where we it's boiled like a dumpling, and so when it's ready, it floats to the top. And it's mixed with beans, and then the season could be blueberry, strawberry. In the fall, we can even use hickory nut, and in our cornbread. And so that's a favorite food among Iroquois people. And then corn soup, by cleaning the corn, and then it's made with mixed with meat and beans, and that's some of the common things. In ceremony, we use blue corn. We use colored corns in ceremony for different kind of things that we have going on. A lot of our ceremonies are related to dreams. So when we talk about culture, everything, so in there including your dreams, it's even including the dead people, because these are our ancestors. So when you want to really grow corn and understand, you have to understand and be conscious of all that. So I was very, very, touched as he was speaking, because he talked about, the ancestors of this area, even though there was this tragic things that happened, but that consciousness and the understanding is still there, and how they did things, and people who try to maintain those things today, that's very, very important to do. So over the number of years, I've been going many places. In the last couple of years, I've been learning how to plant by the moon, because the old people would say, "Oh, we plant by the moon." And so, but what part of the moon they didn't know. So is it a new moon? Is it a full moon?
Full moon.
I tried all different kind of things. I was working with Blue Moon of Kentucky for a while. Just kept on shining, Then and then there was Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne. That was really exciting too. You saw my corn, what it looked like then. So now I learned how to plant by the moon. So in the first part of the moon always begins as a new moon, and each phase of the moon lasts 7 days. So it's a 28-day month, and then it's the same number on the pyramids that were made by the Aztecs and the Mayans. So there's all that connection. And along with that, our ceremonies and the ceremonial year and everything is also marked by the stars. And we use the same star system as they do. And so now those stars are over there. So that's the time to plant, because they're going to go on the other side of the world and they'll be in China for the rest of the year. Then they'll come up there in the fall, and that will be the time to harvest. And then they'll be here in the winter, and that will be the winter ceremonies. So it's connected with the stars, the pattern, and the phases of the moon. So in the new moon, which begins today, which will be for 7 days, it's time to plant greens. So that means spinach, lettuce, herbs, and there's also a new thing that I talked to Cheech and Chong about. It's called medical and recreational cannabis, which is no longer prohibited in Canada, so that you can grow it if you want. People have been smoking for generations, but there you are, Many rock concerts where you could smell it there. So those are the things. It's time to plant cabbage rolls right now. If you want to have fantastic cabbage rolls, it's the time in the new moon. Next week will be the beginning of the half moon. So when you want to learn about things, how the moon cycles work, it's like this. There's wax on, wax off. That's what you do. See? So now it's going to be time to wax on. And so at that time, you can plant everything that has seed inside of the fruit. Now this applies to the phase of the moon. It doesn't apply to say, well, like say in the season, meaning if you have a greenhouse and work in February, it's not the same thing as here. We would do everything in May and June, okay? But you can still apply that same understanding to the greenhouse. So tomato, peppers, pumpkins, squash, melons, they're all example of a seed and a fruit. Bean is a seed in the fruit. So all of that is in the half moon. From there to the full moon, then it changes. At the full moon, it's a big part. Everything that goes under the ground is done in the full moon. So that means potato, onion bulb, garlic, your flower bulbs, gladiola, dahlias in the ground at that time. Along with that is the phase where you transplant. Everything that you're going to transplant gets transplanted in the full moon. So if you got all kind of plants out there that you buy or raise yourself, you transplant it then. Any kind of trees, fruit trees, you transplant it then. You want to divide your flowers in your garden, you divide them in the full moon. That's what you do at that time. And then when the moon starts to go down, that's when you rest. No more planting at that time. It's time to weed and all that kind of stuff. So that's how the moon works. And anyway, got any questions on that?
Is that written down somewhere?
So, huh?
Is that written down somewhere?
It's up here. Now
You can write it down now.
there you are.
My paper.
So what happened? I went to speak at a conference some years ago, and this older lady got up and talked about that. So when I got home, it was the moon, full moon. So I went and I planted potatoes in the full moon. So if you grow potatoes, you know when it begins to flower, it's starting to make. So what happened is I planted some then. I had some that I planted 3 weeks later, and the ones that I planted 3 weeks later already had stems like that. I counted at 39 days planting with the moon, I had flowers on my potatoes. After 21 days, which was not planted in the full moon phase, they were just starting to come out of the ground. So it does work. And if you notice, even when you're planting, sometimes like you plant beans, and then it'll begin to rain. So never soak your bean, because what will happen when it rains, and it turns to mush. So there's a lot of things, that you have to learn and keep in mind, and you learn things the hard way too. I had to learn like hand pollinating before. In the seed savers, they had this idea about using these glassine envelopes, but that didn't work. That was a long time ago, and then you would get squash that would look all whatever. But then I met some really nice people. I met this little lady named Louise Bossabill. She lived in Marblehead, and she grew there on Gregory's Gardens. So she had a seed, but I didn't know how to keep it because I was following their direction and it didn't work. And eventually I made a connection with Heron over here, and we kind of got that thing back going, and he gave me some really old seed, but it germinated. And I didn't get germinated because you have this belief and you have this desire to make that happen. So everything is interconnected, and that's the way we follow. And so everything we do begins with a ceremony. And the thing is, when Indian people pray, we give thanks for everything that we have, no matter what. If it's a lot we get or a little bit, we don't pray to ask for things. I need this, I need that. We don't. We give thanks for what we received. It's up to our Creator to decide. So all of these things together are part of indigenous knowledge of our forefathers, and we still continue to live that way today, the best that we can. And in regards to climate change, we look at well, I have a lot of friends everywhere. So we have corn that's grown by the Hopi, and in Arizona, then it was sent to northern New Mexico, and then from northern New Mexico it was sent to Syracuse, New York, at Onondaga, and it grew it like that. So what happens? It changes the length of the day, because we have a longer day where we are than you have in the south. And what will happen when you have a corn from Mexico? It'll grow 20 feet in the air, but don't produce any fruit, because the day it'll try in September when the day begins to get shorter, but you may not have enough time. So corn didn't get here overnight by UPS. It took a long time. As our forefathers came from the south, they brought their corn, and the village only moved. And as it moved, it climatized. It adjusted to the length of the day. So I went out to Iowa last year. They invited me to come out there to see the seed savers, to help identify a lot of varieties that I introduced over 30 years ago. And they talked about, and the gentleman was there about the seed bank that they have in Norway under the ground, and he talked about something's happened with it too. So it's not 100% foolproof. But one of the things that I thought about, like our people, we say, well, growing the corn all the time, that's the seed bank. If you're going to freeze it, well, that's a different idea. But what happens there? It doesn't collect the memory of time. Now, as the time is changing, even though we're having climate change, and I've known back at home, the summer went right up until late November with all the frost. Doesn't mean it's going to grow. It's going to grow within 110 days, and it's going to be over. So it doesn't collect that memory, and so if you're going to freeze it, it's not going to have adapted from year to year to year. It's going to be at it's going to have that consciousness of a long time ago. So to continue, it has to be grown all the time, every year, every other year. That's what we do, and that's how we maintain our things. And all our varieties, after all the stuff in history that we have, we still have a lot of things. And corn was also stored, like you said, they were buried in the ground. Seed corn was buried in the ground. But in a lot of history, we're attacked by the French, we're attacked by the British, we're attacked by the Americans, we're attacked by the, Donald Trump. It's always about attacking our corn. Why? There's a reason for that. In all the nations of the world, corn is a staple in North America. Wheat is a staple in Europe. And rice is in Asia. So each people is given something different. So in our language, it's called like original seed. And corn will feed a lot of people. You see, in a good year, 1 acre of corn will feed 7 people. In a low yielding year, it'll only feed 3.5 people, 1 acre of corn. Pretty interesting, And I learned all this from Professor Jane Mount Pleasant at Cornell. And she explained all the stuff about the historical facts. And that's why after the Revolutionary War, a lot of the army and soldiers moved into central New York, where the corn, that they wrote, the corn that they saw there, they had 2.5 feet cobs like this, amazing, because of the soil and the way it was, the land there at that time, before all this things that go on today, and herbicide and pesticide and homicide happening. So, anyways.
I'm sorry, you said the cob of corn was 2 feet?
Yeah. Yeah. Flints, yeah. White, Great Northern White Flint. Some of them will grow that long. We have different varieties. We have short varieties and long varieties. But that's the corn that they saw. They rolled it down themselves. Along with writing that down, they also said, well, how come we're burning all this corn? How come we don't take it back to New England where people are starving? They burnt it. You see? What can I tell you? So, in my opinion, it's part of the thing that I heard. Like, in the 4 races of man, everyone's given something different. European people were given the fire. Yellow people were given air. Black people were given water, and red people are given land. And those are the things, sacred things that we're supposed to take care of. You see? And me, I know that I'm a red man because both my parents were born in Brooklyn, New York, because our grandparents were working on all those buildings and bridges. And on their birth certificate, in the 1940s, was signed by the mayor of New York City, and it states that our race is red. Imagine that. I saw it. My mother has it. We're red. Could be a shade a little bit lighter, but we're red. So there you go. And we still continue to do these things. We live our ceremonies all in our communities yet today, and we really work hard at it because there's a lot of things happening and the world is changing, but a lot of people are taking great concern. And as he was saying, the corn, as we talked last weekend, John Schreck said that he believes that these varieties, it's what's going to save the people, because commercial farming and all that, it's going to go out the window, you know, and it's happening. So maybe I'm taking up too much time, so I'm going to be quiet here. I did appreciate coming in here. I thought we were going to have a revival. Praise the Lord.
Steve, can I ask a question about when you plant corn with the moon?
Oh, hold on.
So everything that goes in the ground is the full moon. Is that when you plant corn?
No, you plant corn too. You plant corn actually 1 week before the moon is full, and actually you can plant corn 2 days before the full moon, because the moon, the stars will be in Scorpio, along with beans. The 2 days before the full moon will be, the star system will be Scorpio. That's when you plant corn and beans. So you gotta get out there and plant everything.
Great, thank you.
Adam and Johanna.